on LinkedIn is to divide it in 3 buckets. So we can have educational content, we can have authority building content, and we can have lead generating content. And they all serve a purpose. And I will explain in the next slide how that looks like. So with educational content, I see this as like DIY content. Like it's content that guides and helps your audience to solve their problem themselves. So that can be educational content or carousels. With the authority building content, I still educate, or you still educate, but you educate in such a way that you position yourself as the expert to help the audience solve a problem. So that kind of removes or answers the question, so like, why should I listen to you? And that's authority building content. And then last but not least, lead generating content. That's people that, or content that converts readers into leads, dropping them in your inbox or calendar. So that's the 3 things. So the interesting thing here to notice is that I've added a row with KPIs, because it's very important to understand which type of content you're utilizing at what point and what the goal of that content is. Like I said, the goal of educational content is to help people solve a problem, to build trust, to build goodwill with your audience, to fill up the know, like, trust meter, if you think back of yesterday. But on the other hand, so the KPIs for a educational content is more like, okay, impressions, engagements, type of repost, follower growth, great. But if you then look at like authority building content of lead generating content, the KPIs are different. So I don't necessarily rate a lead generating post on, okay, the number of likes or the number of impressions it's got, because other things are important. Sure, reach and impressions is key, because otherwise no one sees it. But we have had so many, we still see it to this date, like some of our quote unquote worst performing posts in terms of reach and impressions brought in the most leads, brought in the most money in the bank. So again, decide which game you're playing. Are you in the game for growing your audience, or are you in the game of getting more business? We're in the game of this one, so we know how to optimize for that type of content. The selling mechanism is important here. So in educational content, you don't really make a sell. In authority building content, it's kind of like a medium sell. It's like, hey, you talk about the results you're getting, or you talk about how you do certain things, and there is like a soft invitation for you to invite people in. I'm going to go over the examples of these types of content in a second. And with the lead generating content, it's more like a hard sell, like a harder pitch. Suggested formats here. I like carousels. We use a lot of how-to content and cheat sheets. Authority building content, you can think of like case studies, process breakdowns, industry trends. And last but not least, with lead generating content, you can look at hand raisers, case studies, and process breakdowns. So let me go over a few examples here. So educational content, we see this a lot on LinkedIn. We have, let me get up this screen a bit. So we have how-to content. So it's more of like a listicle, like, okay, 5 ways how you do X, Y, and Z. So like I said, it's a do-it-yourself solution for the audience. Like here you have some information, do it yourself. Good luck. So usually the content that gets more likes and some impressions, but it doesn't necessarily sell what you have to offer. With the carousel, on the other end, it's similar, like, but you just have more, what I like to call like real estate to share your knowledge. Because now, as I add a PDF to my post, this one has like 15 or 20 slides. I got way more room to share my message, plus people spend more time with carousels. And then on the right side, we see cheat sheets, very popular on LinkedIn. So again, you have more space to present what you have to offer. So that's simple. So these are like the examples of educational content that you could use to get more leads and to grow the brand. When I go to authority building content, the following one are interested. So you have case studies on the left side. This is an example from Niall, where he just speaks about how they got a client over $350,000 in the last month through LinkedIn. So it builds a lot of authority, because if I'm in this audience, I'm like, okay, these guys know what they do, they back it up. So if I'm interested, I know more. So again, it positions them as the experts to help me solve the problem I have. With the process breakdown in the middle, it's a nice one, because it breaks down the process of me in the business. So what I'm doing, I'm educating the audience on how we get them certain results. So there is an element of like case studies, but also an element of the how-to. So it's definitely like a process breakdown is a perfect example of both educational and authority, because it educates people specifically on what you have to offer. And then on the right side, we see industry trends where you can talk about, okay, something you see happening in your industry or in your market. Again, you speaking about those things positions you as an expert, but it's kind of like a perception, right? You create a perception that you study what's happening in the industry, you have an opinion about it, and you share this to your audience. It's a great way to perhaps not always talk about your business or your client or your case studies specifically, but something that you see happening in the industry. So that's one. And then let me go to the lead generating content. Here is the client result. It's basically the same as like a case study. So you just mention how you got a client a certain result. And on the right side, we see my favorite lead generating type of content. It's a hand raiser, like where we just be very specific. And you often like recognize these posts towards the end where there's like a specific call to action. Hey, if you this and you want to have this, DM me the word X, Y, and Z, and you get more details. So it's very specific, very clear that if I reach out to this, I'm going to get some form of like offer or details based on the post. And yeah, sure, like a hand raiser post doesn't get the most engagement or the most impressions because it's harder for people to engage with. But the right people that see this and are like, hey, I do need to have a consistent lead flow through LinkedIn, they're reaching out, especially because there is case studies and such, or there is elements of authority building there in as well. So those are the 3 types of content that you want to use for LinkedIn.